Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, this is Joanne Victoria, the I Know What Works coach, and I'm also the host of the Sanity Project podcast. I work with people in telecommunications, technology, entertainment, and mass media whose work-life integration plan has imploded and who want more success, more confidence, more fun, and more inner peace. I interview experts in the areas of leadership, management, anxiety, any self-help issue and personal development issue that comes along. And today we have someone in the business world, the world of capitalism, and all sorts of things that I am excited to have as a guest. His name is Blaine Bartlett. He is the author of 4 books, including Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business, which is available at Amazon. Blaine Bartlett is CEO and president of Avatar Resources, a global leadership development and consulting firm he founded in 1987. He has coached and consulted worldwide with executives, companies, and governments, and has personally delivered programs to more than 250,000 individuals and has directly impacted more than 1 million people worldwide. Blaine is an adjunct professor at Beijing University, managing director of the Global Coaching Alliance, founder of the Institute for Compassionate Capitalism, and a longtime member of the Transformational Leadership Council. Today, Blaine Bartlett is going to talk to us about the disconnect between business as it's currently conducted, which is a really important topic in my mind, as well as living a meaningful and thriving life. Welcome to the Sanity Project, Blaine Bartlett.
Joanne, thank you very much for that generous introduction, as well as the invitation to be on your show. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. I know I found you, don't remember where, but I'm so glad that I did. And when I listened to some of your podcasts, what is the name of the podcast that you host, Blaine?
That's The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett.
Remember that one, people, and you could find it. I'll also have it on my website when that time comes, when this is published. And talk to us about the disconnect between business and who else? I mean, you have between business as it's currently conducted. Is that between the business owners and the workers, the business owners and the public? What are you talking about?
Well, it really is kind of the gestalt of disconnect from life, I think might be the best way of handling that question. Business as it's currently conducted, and I'm going to just preface here, I am an avowed and unapologetic capitalist. I think it's the most viable and the most productive economic model that has ever come across the horizon. And that being said, it seriously has gone off the rails in the way that it is currently being conducted. The title of my book, the one that you referenced, Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business, there was an interesting, what's the word I'd use here, article that came out a number of years ago that spoke to the soul of business and its lack thereof. And the idea was that as we look deeper into the soul of capitalism, we find that in terms of ordinary human existence, American capitalism doesn't appear to have one. And that was a quote by William Grider, and New York Times columnist. The idea of a soul of business, the Greeks identified the soul as that thing that provided life. I mean, it was that animating quality that gave life to what we see in this world. And today's business model, it's toxic. It's toxic to life on the planet. I mean, business is the most pervasive force on the planet today. I mean, there is literally nothing that is not touched by the activity of business, the consequences of the activity of business. I mean, I can be a mollusk out in the middle of the South Pacific, and my shell is starting to degrade because there's excess CO2 in the water. And that's a direct consequence of business's activities. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it has to do with, because it is the most pervasive force on the planet, it can ultimately be an incredible source of good. Where we went off the rails is when we started moving away from identifying value as the impetus for businesses and activities, and I'll talk about value in just a minute here, and we started paying attention to profit as the ultimate arbiter of a business's success. Value, in the way that we're looking at it, and the way that I look at it, is that the consumer of a product or service, do they feel enlivened as a consequence of being in the presence of that service or product? If I feel more alive in my skin because I'm accessing your product or service, I'm probably going to stay around and I'll be a customer for some time. And that aliveness is symbiotic. It's a function of connection. And businesses that are paying attention to connection in this way are businesses that will ultimately thrive. And I think that's one of the ways that we got away from what the promise of capitalism could have been, which was an uplift of life on the planet. And we started looking at how can we just get ours, which is a scarcity model. The universe is abundant. I mean, it is incredibly abundant. And the model that we operate off of today is driven by consumption, and its focus is on we've got to get ours before it's gone. And that is disconnected us from life. It's disconnected us from soul. It's disconnected us from spirit. And it's causing some incredibly unfortunate consequences. So yeah, that's my soapbox speech. I'm totally enthralled and engaged with what you're saying, because when you talk about the soul of business, I have these moments where I decide what I'm going to call myself at a time. And a few years back, I called myself the soul care specialist because I thought people have lost their soul. I don't call myself that now because people don't understand. But it's still, there is no soul left in people. They're just trying to, with all of the heads bobbing up in the ocean on any level for anything, for any business, any resource. There are many people out there. And yet you would think, well, maybe I have 10% of those people. But, maybe 10% of the people is better than nothing. To have a soul, to be involved in the soul of what you're doing, because I think everything comes from the soul. I don't know if I would say the soul is the spirit, but spirituality and soul and heart are missing in business today. It's just missing. And, I plug away doing my little bit. You have a much bigger bit that you perform in, and the stage that you're on. And I don't think that people, and capitalism, I'm all for it. Yay. I'm not a socialist by any means. I'm totally the opposite. I just, with all of this stuff that goes on in the newspapers that I choose to avoid, it's a world that I don't understand outside of myself and a few others. It was like, I look at it and go, where do these people get these ideas? Or thinking that they could comment on everything when they have no knowledge, and there is no soul in what these people are doing, the ones who are hammering away. And the Greeks were here a long time before you and I and anybody else that's around now was. So if they consider the soul as providing life, I think you're on the track to that. And you're looking at the soul of businesses is, to me, a blessing that somebody. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, you should.
Absolutely.
It's your stuff. You should agree.
Yeah. When Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations back in 1776. It actually was the first codification. Basically, it was the first codified economic treatise, and it literally laid out, what became known as capitalism. Adam Smith didn't call it capitalism, but it was predicated on mutual benefit, enlightened self-interest. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that before he wrote the Wealth of Nations, he wrote another book about 16 years earlier. It was called The Theory of Moral Sentiment, and it was specifically written to identify what is that animating force that we need to be paying attention to in life. And it was that theory of moral sentiment that gave birth to the notion of the invisible hands of commerce, that is cited so often when people talk about Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations. The invisible hand is predicated on enlightened self-interest. I scratch your back, you scratch my back, and I want to be sure that I do you no harm, because if I do you harm, it's going to come back on me. So the idea of connection becomes really, really important. And the idea of compassionate capitalism almost is oxymoronic. When I first wrote the book, people would go, well, how can those two coexist, compassion and capitalism? And it's both a statement of people's experience of what goes on in business today, but also a little bit of a misunderstanding of what compassion is. Compassion is not soft and fluffy. Compassion is really something substantial. Lao Tzu, a long time ago, said that out of caring comes courage. And if I don't care about the consequences of my actions, if I don't care about the constituencies with whom I'm dealing, I don't have the courage to make hard decisions. And compassion has a base of caring that requires courage. How do I make decisions that are in service of the greater good, not just the business itself? And it's that dynamic that when we lose it, we start to disconnect from literally everything.
Yes.
So the invitation, go ahead.
Right. Well, I was just thinking in my teachings, when I was studying Buddhism, Buddha and supported by the Dalai Lama, compassion is not wanting anyone else to suffer, including yourself. You have to have compassion with yourself first in order to come from a full place, but not wanting others to suffer. And for others not to suffer, you have to be generous. You have to be generous with speech, with thought, with doing, with everything. And I think that, and to have that as a title, Compassionate Capitalism, I think they go together because I understand what the words mean. And I think people who do understand what the words mean separately and even together, because it's a good combo, will get that. And I'm sure thousands have. I'm sure you've sold lots of books on this, but Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. People, listen to that again. And people don't understand, you're right, they don't understand what compassion truly is. It's not feeling sorry for someone, it's wanting them to achieve the best.
Exactly. And that wanting them to achieve the best, wanting them to be as alive as they can be. And that's ultimately what I'm in business for, is to uplift the experience of being alive on this planet. I mean, that's literally why I'm in business. And if I'm doing that well, I'm going to be around a while. I mean, my client base, averages, they're with me at least 12 years, 10 to 12 years. That's the average length of a client engagement with our firm. And that's not because we build independency, it's because we build in value. The whole focus is on value. Do you feel more alive? Are you more alive as a consequence of interacting with us? And resoundingly, the answer to that question is yes, based on results. Mm-hmm. My oldest client's been with me for 32 years, which is crazy. I mean, it's a marriage. So those sorts of things happen not by accident; they happen by intent.
Right.
And And that intent has to do with, recognizing that everything is connected. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, all an organization is, whether it's a family or a business, it's a collection of individuals that are in relationship. That's all any organization is. And that seems obvious on at face value, because most people, when I say that, think about interpersonal relationships, and that is part of it. But it's also the smallest part. People have relationship with dreams. They have relationship with vision, with values. They have relationship with work process. They have relationships with work tools. I mean, people have relationships with the chairs that they sit in. And the reason I go to that degree is to the degree that all of these relationships are working well. In other words, they're connected well. The organization is going to be pretty successful, and it might even end up thriving as a consequence. But it's a function of relationship, and it's a function of attending to the quality of the relationships in all of their varied forms. And not a lot of leaders are schooled in how to do that. A lot of metrics, well, all of the metrics really in business, aren't organized around quality of relationship.
Yes, I just had to make a note of that. Yet I do see some very large companies that seem to have unhappy employees and unhappy executives as well. So how, you know who I'm talking about, or more than one, but how do we correlate all that together so people understand? Because people are, if I'm asking the question, someone listening is asking the question. So, we're quantum physics personified here.
Yes.
But I truly abide by that and believe in that. So, how do we, or do we just ignore it? Because
no, I honestly, Joanne, I don't think we can afford to ignore it. I mean, things have gone so abysmally off the rails that to ignore it is a death sentence. And I don't mean that hyperbolically. It really is. We're in dire straits right now.
I know
in a lot of ways.
But people are so
economic disparity, social, Gallup, the Gallup organization has conducted a poll, for at least 20, 25 years, looking at, what they call employee engagement. And essentially it's a measure of how emotionally involved are people. And this is a relationship, question. How emotionally engaged are they in what they're doing at work? And over this, 2 decades plus, the numbers that have come in suggest that up to 87% of the global workforce is disconnected from the work process itself, from the work itself. And what's interesting is that number has not changed much, maybe a percentage point, up or down, over the last 2.5 decades. Now, where this goes to from an economic perspective is businesses, and this is some data that the McKinsey organization came out with not too long ago, spends on average $47 billion a year on leadership development processes, leadership development programs, with the expressed intent of improving that that disengagement number. And it hasn't moved in 25 years. So we're throwing $47 billion annually away because we're paying attention to the wrong things. And what we pay attention to typically with those typical traditional leadership programs are vision, mission, strategy, and tactics. What we don't pay attention to is soul. What we don't pay attention to is what is that ineffable, that hard to quantify thing that brings life to the organization.
Well,
and
I'm going rah inside my head while you're speaking these words, but because my perspective on many employees in any company, I don't care what size you are, it's all the same. It's still high school to them. They come in, the employees come in, okay, I want this job. I'm going to do this job well. I'm going to fit in with my team and my coworkers. But their personalities from high school show up, and, and that's a big downfall for the company, because they have, you have people who have names like well, I can't even go into what their nicknames would be at work, but because that would give away too much. But people are unhappy, and they bring their unhappiness eventually into the job. And there's no, I don't care, you're right, no amount of employee engagement is going to be proven to be successful if employees are just going, and answering the questions the way they are expected to in any kind of a survey you would put out, because you need to have a survey to see, you have to measure things, but not, and it's a big mess.
Where it gets interesting, and I absolutely concur with what you're saying here, is that, and this is one of the things that actually kind of sparked my interest in writing this book, as well as a couple of the other ones that I wrote. I've been in the consulting field, I founded my company in 87, and I was working probably a decade before that in other consulting firms. And one of the things that I noticed was that, when the when the whistle blew and people came to work at 7 a.m. as an example, they would, this is, metaphoric here, they'd hang their hat up and they'd kind of stand there, and wait to be told what to do. Okay, you go do this. And so the managers would tell them what to do, and then they would do what they were doing. And at the end of the day, when the 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock whistle blew, they'd pick their hat up and they'd go out. And all of a sudden they became alive. They became, agency was no longer a question. They were free agents. They went out there and they did what they wanted to do. They didn't need to be told what to do. They were acting in their own self-interest. What was going on at work? There was an expectation that they would not be alive. At work, there was an expectation that they would do what they were told, when they were told, and how they were told. And that is antithetical to the human spirit. That's antithetical to life. So part of what we begin to look at is, how do we begin to develop a different consciousness? Max Planck, the founder of quantum physics, and you mentioned quantum physics, famously said at one point in his career that we can get behind everything. We can get behind molecules. We can get behind atoms. We can get behind electrons. We can get behind it to see there's something else underneath there. But we can't seem to get behind consciousness. Consciousness just seems to be. And consciousness, that was his word for what we're essentially referring to here as spirit, or maybe soul, or whatever. But there's this defining quality, this animating quality that we can't seem to get behind. There's you kind of look behind it. There's nothing there. It just is there, and it gives form to what it is that we experience and what we call reality. So that being said, where I was going, go ahead.
People are afraid of something that they can't touch or define. And this has been going on for a very long time. And, you, me, and a few others are doing our best. But if it's not something that's definable, marketable, profitable, it's not looked at by the people who most need to look at it.
Exactly.
They can't put it in a box.
Can't put it in a box. They can't measure it well.
Right.
They can certainly see the consequence when it exists, because there are some companies, on this beautiful planet that we have, that are doing some things pretty right, where they have aliveness in their organization, and the products that they are producing and the services that they are offering are life-giving, life-affirming, and they don't rape, pillage, and plunder. Now, scale comes into play with this. Nobody's going to get everything 100% right, but they're doing their level best to change the nature of the game. And the people in these organizations tend to be excited. They tend to be alive. They tend to be imaginative, creative. As far as I can tell, imagination lives at the threshold of the spirit. And when I start letting spirit speak, imagination starts to really percolate. And that's where we get innovation. That's where we get all kinds of things that can really uplift and up-level the experience of being alive. And that's very cool. That's exciting. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that people have access to very often. And this is one of the reasons that startups, I love working with startups. An idea has come to fruition, and there's a lot of energy, a lot of passion. And the mission, so there's a business that's being developed to deliver on this mission that somebody's had an idea about. At some point, if the organizational process is successful, the business becomes viable. The mission is getting delivered on. But there's a point in every organization's lifeline where the business becomes more important than the mission, and the business decision or the decisions that are being made are made in service of the business's viability, not the mission's viability. And that is a very slippery slope, and it's one that happens almost invisibly. And it's a function of our metric structures and all kinds of other things, what we're paying attention to. Energy follows attention. It doesn't follow intention. So I want to be really cognizant of where my energy is being drawn. And a lot of where our energy goes is not in a way that, or is not in directions that are actually going to be allowing us to thrive long term.
Well, I respect the time and the devotion that you have put into this process. I don't know. What I think is, especially with entrepreneurs, they have this mission, they have this idea, and they're excited, and then the adrenaline drops a little bit, and they go, well, because they don't have somebody who's keeping them on purpose. They need an outsider, such as yourself, to come and keep them focused on why they went into this business in the first place. Not the product so much as the soul, the energy, the love and the heart and from within. And they need somebody, and it only has to come from the outside, because internal, it just somebody feels like they're being chastised. So if it comes from the outside, you can have more of an open discussion about things, and then private discussions, because that's what's necessary. People need, however you want to label, coach, consultant, whatever, friend. But they need someone to step in to keep them on purpose about why they started this as a group of people. This particular group. Why is this particular group working? What makes it work?
The culture, culture is Mark Benioff, well, not Mark Benioff, it's actually Peter Drucker, a long time ago said that culture will eat strategy for lunch. And then Mark Benioff shortened that and said, no, things are moving so fast, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Either one of them are true. If I'm not paying attention to the culture, and again, this goes back to relationship, culture is just the artifact of the quality of the relationships in the organization. That's all a culture is. It's the artifact of our collective belief systems, our collective values. And if somebody's not paying attention to that culture, it will go off the rails. Because to the point that you made a little bit earlier about, we show up with our high school personas. We need to be attending to what culture is going to best serve what we want to have here. And how do I grow into that? How do I, literally grow up and grow into that culture? And that's where caring leads to courage. Having the courage to make some tough decisions about some of these things.
I'm on you. I'm traveling with you. I'm on the same path, same road, same thoughts, same desires, and hopefully people will get it one day. So there's nothing else to do but keep moving forward. That's my perspective on this. You just have to.
Einstein said, absolutely. Just not give up. Einstein said nothing happens until something moves. So part of my mission is to move things.
Yes.
That's what I'm doing. Just moving things. We'll see what happens.
Blaine Bartlett. And you can reach him at blainebartlett.com and avatar-resources.com. Are there any final words you want to give to our audience, Blaine, before we sign off?
Just that I think that, hope, Oscar Wilde a long time ago, wrote about utopia. And he said, without utopias, humans never make progress. With the idea of utopia, and a lot of what we talk about, or at least what I find myself talking about, can seem utopiistic, and it's dreams that move people. It's dreams of a better future that move people. So I guess if I have any parting words here is to just keep dreaming and keep in motion around the dreams. Just keep in motion around the dreams. And some of it will work, some of it won't. But we want to just leverage what we can. And they can find out more about me at, The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett is a podcast. I've got all kinds of real interesting guests, much the same as what you're doing with Sanity, the Sanity Project. Mm-hmm. I love it. This is a great conversation, Joanne. I thank you very much.
Well, I thank you for being here. You hit my intuitive button when I saw your information, and I knew that you needed to be a guest here. So I want to tell everybody who's listening, please, please, please listen to this podcast, because you have missed lots of things, I can tell you, because this is, 25 minutes plus or minus of content that's important. So re-listen to this podcast, share it with your family, your friends, your frenemies, your coworkers, your bosses, email a link to it. And if you want any help from me, you can reach me at askjoannevictoria.com. Check out my coaching page. Check out my podcast page. And if you want to ask a question, there's a page for that as well. So everybody have a wonderful day. And also, as another reminder, as far as Blaine Bartlett is concerned, when you link into this from apple.com, because you will be getting that link, give him a 5-star review, please, people, because he deserves it. And just because I said so, and I'm the boss. Okay, everybody, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.